Good afternoon, and welcome to this month's podcast on divorce and finances, the voice of the CDFA. This month, I'm being joined by Alexei Bulenkoff, and Alexei is a newer CDFA professional, but he has offered to share some of his experiences with our audience. Can you tell me why you decided to add divorce to your financial practice?
Hi, Carol. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Yes, so I have been doing this uh, financial planning that is for my clients for close to 20 years, and I have always been told that it would behoove me to find a niche to establish myself as an expert in some niche, and that was always a challenge for me because my client group is very, very diverse, and I have never quite figured out what do they all have in common. And then, one day I came across the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst curriculum, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, more often than not, practically all of my clients are either on their second marriage, their third marriage, or they had marital troubles or they're going through divorce. So that all of a sudden was an aha moment for me, and that what caused me to browse the website and open the curriculum. And the more I read about it, the more I saw how applicable and how relevant that is. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to your simple question, but it did not come to me overnight. This was something that I was uh, I was working on, and it found me as much as I found it.
Do you predominantly work with women or equally women and men, or which?
Yeah, it's both. It's probably equally split. What I've found a lot of times that some clients are more open to talking about their divorce versus uh, some are not. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I was raised by a single mother, so I am used to uh, to having conversations with women about family things, and I work with both. So the answer is I work with both. Do I enjoy one more than the other? No. It They are very different in the way they approach it, in the way they think about it. Um, I work both with men and women, and both breadwinners and stay-at-home spouses. Uh, I live in California. It's a very diverse state. We have all shapes and sizes. So I've had clients who were executives in their former lives and then transitioned to being stay-at-home parents, and then were faced with this divorce situation. Some were never in the workforce. Some wanted to be in the workforce and maybe went through schooling, but then ended up uh, not being not being in the workforce. So all shapes and sizes. It's very hard to say one or the other. So.
It's funny. When I was first hired by IDFA, frequently when we were talking to firms or we were going to conferences, people were always talking about divorce as being a woman's issue. And that used to puzzle me because it's like, no, almost every divorce involves both a man and a woman. It shouldn't be considered a woman's issue. But as I did more and more research, I realized that although in most cases it's a man and a woman, the impact of divorce can be much bigger on the woman, because even in this day and age, and even with all the diversity and most families having, both parents in the workforce, the reality is that at over a lifetime, the average woman earns $1 million less than the average man. The average woman's Social Security is 1/3 less than the average man. The average woman's retirement savings are 1/3 less than the average man. So it's easy to see how someone who was working in the divorce arena would have to be comfortable dealing with both men and women and know the different impacts on each going through divorce.
And I would like to add to that. I wholeheartedly agree. The impact is much bigger, but it's also almost irrespective of the social status. So you would think, when you say something like this, well, the impact on women is bigger. In the back of the mind, a lot of people think, well, that's because they don't have as much work experience or the social role. No, I have seen both, where women who inherited a large wealth are going through divorce, women who obtained wealth by being executives or exercising their executive compensation, stock options, going through the divorce. I have seen people on their second divorce who are women who have a large chunk of their wealth attributed to the prior divorce, and all of them are impacted very much, both emotionally and socially and financially. So you are preaching to the choir. I fully agree.
If you could give our audience one suggestion, one something that you wish when you had first started your CDFA program you knew.
Nobody knows anything, or maybe not as categorically. So, Leo Tolstoy, one of my favorite authors, in his book Anna Karenina, he had a quote, and I might butcher it, but he's saying that all happy families are the same, and all unhappy families are unique in their own way. So same can be said about divorce. So every divorce is different. No two divorces are the same, and there is not possibly a one person or one firm even that can be fluent in dealing with every type of divorce. So, just entering this field, I was thinking, oh, well, if I find a good divorce lawyer that I can work with, and I have my financial knowledge I can bring to the table, between the two of us, we'll know everything. No, absolutely not. So what I wish I knew, and what my advice, my unsolicited advice to my fellow colleagues would be, is build a team, build a strong team around you, find a law firm, that specializes in women, find a law firm that specializes in men, find a marriage and family therapist, find a counselor, speak to as many divorcees or divorcing couples as you can, because not one person can possibly know all of it or even get close to knowing all of it about something as complex as divorce.
It's funny. I think you raised a really good point, and maybe not, I won't say it exactly the same way you did, but it's important to realize that just somebody knowing the information about divorce or knowing the information for financial planning doesn't mean they'll necessarily be a good fit with a client. I think it's important that clients interview professionals. And just like if you went to a doctor and you felt the doctor wasn't listening to you, or the doctor, wasn't answering your questions fully, you'd think nothing of getting a second opinion. I think it's important in financial services across the board that you feel that you have a good relationship there, that that the advisor is listening to you, that the advisor is functioning as the fiduciary and taking your best interest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There is an old adage where they say people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and this is very applicable to this situation. My my wife works for a big law firm, and she does corporate law, and I asked her if there's anybody in her firm that does divorce, and she asked her supervisor, and the answer was, it's like, oh no, we don't do any touchy-feely stuff. So, I mean, as complicated as a divorce can be with all the numbers and all the law and everything else, first and foremost, it's a very emotional issue, and you have to find an expert who's knowledgeable, but who's also shares your values and your approaches. So some people are competitive and adversarial. Some people are naturally looking to make that process, wholesome and cooperative and not adversarial. So absolutely, you have to find somebody who shares your outlook, who shares your values, who shares your style. And it's very difficult to do when it's such a complex issue. There is not a lot of people who are vested in it. So, kudos to the Institute for even coming up with the curriculum and the designation. I think we are doing a great service to the public out there.
I really agree with you. I think it's an incredible service because whether or not you're the individual who is filing for divorce or whether you're blindsided by the idea of divorce, it doesn't have to be done in a vacuum. It doesn't have to be done without the education and the knowledge to make the best of what can be a very disastrous situation for both parties.
Absolutely.
One more question. You mentioned that you have clients that are on their second marriage, some on their third marriage. After you work with a client going through the divorce process, do you talk to them about prenuptials in advance of their next marriage, or have you ever thought of starting that dialogue?
I make sure we have this conversation. And again, it's a very fine line to walk where you don't want to give clients any legal advice. You should have that or you should have that. It's but sharing common knowledge is allowable. So you can say, well, a lot of people in your situation that I work with have invested time in maybe avoiding this in the future. But most and foremost, the easiest way to get people to do something is to make sure it's their idea. And a lot of time by the end of the process, whether it's easy or whether it's messy, one of the questions that's in client's mind is, how do I avoid doing this again? And that conversation kind of happens on its own. And again, I work with a lot of different type of clients. I have clients who are, for example, again, executives, and they want everything, I's dotted and T crossed, things in terms of contracts and in terms of goals and execution of goals, versus, if you work with somebody who has been out of the workforce for a while and it's a very emotional process to them, you want to talk to them in terms of, how do you avoid this, devastating emotional experience in the future. Some of my clients are professional athletes, so with them, we would talk about, how do we play defense? So you have to speak to people in their language, and it has to be their idea. But yes, absolutely. After you go through this process, nobody wants to repeat it. At least I have not ever had anybody say, "Oh, well, that was fun. Let's do it again."
Yeah. Don't get a lot of people clamoring for their second or third divorce. Thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to speak with us. I appreciate your time, and it was nice getting to know you better. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. And again, thank you for all the work you do, and I'm looking forward to staying involved with the Institute. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexi.